This is part one of my interview with the 49th president of the AAUP, Cary Nelson. He observes that the shift to a majority contingent faculty is not only an economic sea change. Instead, it signals a dizzying new intellectual reality for most faculty and for their students as well.
It's broadly recognized, certainly by contingent faculty themselves, that they really don't possess academic freedom in the way that the American Academy has assumed for basically half a century that everyone who teaches does. If you meet with contingent faculty, as I have continually for over 20 years, you learn a lot about what it means to feel emotionally and professionally pressed toward frankness and toward courage, and to feel that every time you take a step in that direction, you're endangering your livelihood and endangering your family. I spoke to a group of contingent faculty earlier this year at a school that offers tenure to no one, and that was in the midst of some public controversies. The president called together the faculty, all of them contingent, and said if any of them spoke to the press, they would be fired. To live as a contingent faculty member in that kind of shadow of fear on the one hand, and because you are an intellectual, feel pressed to be frank and challenging to your students, places you in a kind of fundamentally schizophrenic situation. And it's one that faculty members with tenure simply don't have to face. Doesn't mean that faculty members with tenure don't get terrified about frankness, but at least if they have the courage to speak, they know that they have a serious degree of protection. And without it, then you have to ask yourself, what does it mean to feel that dedication to your students for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, but to have it compromised by that kind of fundamental anxiety for that period of time. And it can be really quite disabling and quite costly to the contingent faculty that work under those conditions. I talk to many contingent faculty who, break out on a cold sweat as they think through the risks of putting on the table issues that might potentially upset some of their students. Many faculty, of course, feel that it's fundamental to education to challenge student beliefs, not to mock student beliefs, not to tell them they have to change their beliefs, but to get students to realize that in an academic setting, they should learn how to defend their convictions in an articulate and persuasive way. And indeed, you need to challenge them to get that result. What often happens with a contingent faculty member is the department head says, well, we have a problem here. There's a person creating controversy. I just won't rehire them next term. They won't get fired. They just disappear and no one notices that they're gone. So, the sort of daily process of stimulating debate, a contingent faculty member is vulnerable to the student who's getting a C or D in the class and decides to use that performance to punish the faculty member. So it's a question of teaching in a climate of fear versus teaching in a climate of freedom and honest interchange with your students. It's not just speaking out in the classroom that's an issue for them, it's the sort of daily business of constructing a syllabus, deciding what concepts you want to emphasize in your classroom. All of that's compromised if you don't have job security. It's been, the AAUP was founded on the principle that academic freedom and job security are inextricably linked. I mean, you cannot have one without the other. And it's a lesson that is now much more powerfully relevant to the American Academy than it has been for decades, because our reliance on contingent faculty has really doubled in the past 30 years. And 2/3 of our teaching is now being done by people without any job security. Perhaps slightly more than that if you add all the graduate students in, which we don't have great statistics about, but we know that there are thousands of them out there doing that kind of work. So the American Academy has shifted from a place where there's a great deal of reinforcement for intellectual independence for its faculty to a place where there is very little I mean, that's a fundamental change in the confidence that we can have that our students are getting the best that our faculty have to offer. That I think that's most serious that's being taken from them is the certainty that they will hear from their faculty informed, passionate, articulate advocacy. Students, as part of their education, need more than just objective presentation of facts. They have to understand what it's like to be an intellectual. They have to understand what it's like to be committed to a position, to have thought matters through, to have well-reasoned arguments to use to back up a position. They have to understand intellectual passion and commitment. And for faculty to display that, they need to have a degree of job security. I think that's the thing that most troubles me from an American educational system that is largely dependent upon contingent labor, that, students will not actually learn what it means to profess. To be a professor is also to profess. It's to state claims. It's to negotiate your way through competing arguments. It's to decide where your convictions place you and to display that kind of advocacy in front of your students. And they're just going to get less of it from faculty who are in danger of being punished for displaying that very thing.